Through the valley. Through the valley of trash he commenced. He needed to find some answers to his questions. Marching up the hill and climbing the fenced areas and enclosures that warned him to stay out. But now there was very little he wasn't ready to go against. After he had run into the man at the paper stand, who said all your problems can be condensed into a single point of nothing by a single man. Who could this man be, our wanderer asked. The paper stand man said first you have to buy a magazine. So he flipped through a few of them and passed to one that had next month's winners in its pages. So he dug out some dollar coins to get the forecast. And the paper stand man smiled, pointed upward, and then he said on the hill, do you see the mast? There's a monk up there that's figured it all out. He spent the last 13 years thinking about life, and now he has a recipe to fix all humanity. He did it by meditating, studying, and throwing off his wife. They say he has ascended to the next level. And then when he speaks, his voice has the sound of a fife, and he has a visible aura and a red-orange glow. He's ready to cut through our pain with a knife. How do I get there? He asked the paper stand man. No taxis or buses can get you on the mountain. There are no roads, just a jagged elevated path. If you take it up far enough, you'll find the fountain. Drink it up, because it is the last chance you'll get. So keep all your fingers poised to count in. But what do I need to bring? Flowers, wine, or a coin? He asked. And what exactly is the amount in? $3.50, but I can't tell you the rest. Our wanderer checked into his room and looked at all the accumulated dust. He lit a candle and then choked on the fume. He packed a bag of the most holy things he could find, a kitchen knife, his black rock collection, and a broom. He set out into the night while the fires burnt, and the celebratory lights went off with a boom. He just set his head down and marched away. His thighs ached, his feet blistered, and his back bent. He forsook his fellow man, seeking not another one. He forsook his fellow man, seeing not another one. All the wild animals gathered as they picked up his scent. He wouldn't make it another hour this way. But there was no shortcut or cheat to crawl through the vent. So he fashioned his walking stick into a bully club, keeping away the evil spirits that hell sent. Only boredom and visions and mirages greeted him. As he rounded a corner in yet another switchback, he saw a little church and getaway resort. Nero, Nero, he cried as he ran up the track. To get where you're going, you need a bigger bottle than that, said the priest who met him and took his pack. Once the Claps man revived and was able to speak, he thanked the priest, dressed all in black. Then he asked where in the world he was at. That really depends, said the priest, on where you're going. The man told him, I'm going to the place where I can be made fresh, clean, and meet the all-knowing. Oh yes, said the priest. I'd say you're 10% there. Oh, how can I be so far? That's not what the map's showing. This is uncharted territory, my friend, said the priest. Here is the one place where with land we are overflowing. You better rest now, because tomorrow will be the longest. The man shuffled his papers in a random order. What have you been writing? The priest asked him. Just a play, sheepishly said the man, about a hoarder. He handed it to the priest, who rifled through the papers. He looked closely at it and felt the paper border, and gave it back with a plaintive smile. So what do you think? He asked the hope-to-be a warder. Oh, I'm sorry, the priest said. I don't speak good English. The priest discussed with the traveler various subjects. I don't want to talk about religion today. It's all I ever do from one day to the next. I'd quit this job, but then I'd lose my donkey, and I'd sure miss the fill of those checks. But I'd be happy to give you all of my opinions. I'm a little out of the loop. What's going on with Malcolm X? The man broke the news to the priest and got up. He began to move on, realizing there was time. He climbed up the rocks and fell into a ditch. His teeth broken, his body now covered in slime. He could only get up, brush himself off, and focus on his goal, the changing paradigm. He had to find the next station rather quickly, preferably before the church bells he left behind began to chime. His water was low, his stomach empty, and his spirit broken. He looked up in the distance and did not see his goal, only another old building, cursed with a steeple. When the clock reached 0, it did not toll, but it was a landmark, a place to happily reach and enjoy. He pictured a kindly man, tediously bending over a scroll, happy to break his labor and help our young man. As the building got larger and larger, it was hard to control the excitement he felt for reaching a place of rest and solitude. But he shouted and shouted, and no one replied. Worst of all, the doors were locked and the water shut off. Oh, a good human attitude! They've always lied. He sat down, counting his beans, and worried over rations. Could he off this mountain find a place to safely slide? Was it time to get up, time to turn around and walk down? At the very least, he could always say that he tried. But what would happen if he really returned? He'd be mocked. He'd be scorned by the paperstand man. He'd always wonder what could have really been. Perhaps he'd lose his job and move into a van. Surely there are worse places to be than stuck on a hill with no food, no water, no floor or dustpan. His only path was forward, linear as time moves. So he took his steps so fast, it was as if he had ran. Nothing was stopping him now, the determined traveler. The paths were bad, and the signs didn't work. He passed the time by counting from 1 to 100 again. In the shadows all his friends and villains lurk. He knelt for some god to direct his judgment, but the only answer was the way the trees above him jerk. He took a deep breath and put one foot in front of another, knowing that his only permission was his duties to shirk. To life, country, family, and history he was absent. Up ahead were tall, whitewashed walls, a stern, frowning face that said there's no vacancy here, a governmental project that placed towers formed into balls. The sign on the door was not written in English or Hindi, so he knocked on the door and floated down the halls. The never-ending labyrinth took him from one reality to another, fragmenting each of his spirits into separate stalls, feeling that each organ of his body from him had been ripped. In the last hall sat a man cross-legged and alone. He really did seem to glow and be written by angels. Above was a swirling pattern that congregated on his throne. His eyes were closed, and the traveler's presence was not acknowledged. In his pocket, the wanderer felt for a stone, to place it at the king's feet or toss it on the ground. They sat in silence until the monk let out a groan, perhaps a cry of impatience or a cry of unbearable pain. Finally he spoke. Left to lock, right to unlock. Or maybe, actually, it's the other way around. Exit is on the left, and on the right is chalk. Draw a circle around yourself, and plunge right in. Swim until you reach the large metallic coated clock, and when you've conquered space, you can fight yourself. With what's remaining, build yourself a yellow smock. Now twirl into the ball of the green glass snake. I didn't quite catch that. I don't understand, said the traveler in a voice of exhaustion. The monk closed his eyes and raised up his hand. The wanderer collapsed from his knees to the floor. He could do nothing except weep into the pit of sand. He had failed to get his answers and would not make it down. His only hope was to permanently fall into dreamland. Perhaps the same one we've all found ourselves trapped in.